Hey, Modern Mystic, thanks for those videos. I'm going to try to respond in one video and try to relate everything you said in both videos. Um, as far as Hofstadter and emotion goes, the reason I got on him about that was I think he wasn't considering the motivations behind our thoughts, and he was sort of saying that we don't have, okay, there's no I, granted, but there is an identity. It's not in here. It is my feeling of being aware of what I identify with. I can identify with myself, my body, my own ego. I can identify with my family. I can identify with my nation. I can identify with my race. I can identify with my species. I can identify with my universe. And especially on that latter scale, the identification with the universe, it's a very mystical thing, and a scientist isn't going to start trying to analyze it, of course. But also, I don't think a scientist can analyze emotion. A scientist can analyze the neural correlates of emotion, but I'm more interested in the phenomenology of all of this. What motivates us? What is it that makes us human? What does it mean to be human? And, like you said, being a human being is really being a composite of all these other organisms. I think something like 80% of the life, the DNA in our body is actually not human. It's these parasites and these organisms that we've grown into some kind of a symbiotic relationship with. But that just means that being a human is being composed of all of these elements, all of these other organisms. If you look at the whole biosphere, the first life to appear was anaerobic bacteria, right? And they're still here, and they're producing the gases in the atmosphere to sustain the rest of the higher life, the more organized life. And so that's all part of our body still. The trees outside are part of my lungs, and the sun is part of what's supplying energy to me. And it's all one big system. And I, as a body self, am intricately connected to all of that. And I think what human beings are all about, we have this cognitive ability to recognize our position in this cosmos. And I think being that we can recognize that, it's our job to integrate it all, to bring equilibrium as best we can. And I was just reading this book that was talking about the difference between Taoists and Confucians. Taoists are very skeptical about the ability of human beings to do good for nature or for other humans, whereas Confucians think it's a human duty to try to bring heaven and earth together and to try to create new patterns and ways of acting in the world that spread tranquility and peace and whatnot to other people. So the Taoist says, leave it alone and let nature take its course and do its thing, because human beings always just get in the way of that. And the Confucian says, well, wait, we're nature too, and we can try to bring about new and better and more organized patterns, because we're not separate from nature. And both of them are valid, I think, because oftentimes, all this do-goodery leads to more trouble, and that's definitely true. But I think, we really need to integrate all of our identities, because we're not just an ego. We're certainly not just an ego that doesn't exist. I mean, Hofstadter, Daniel Dennett, these scientists that are trying to reduce consciousness to some kind of not only a brain state, but a state of, a symbolic state, because that's the only way they can study it. I think they are taking their role as scientists or philosophers or computer engineers, whatever they want to call themselves, too seriously, and they're bracketing their human experience and looking only at the scientific data. And what's interesting and what I really like about their science and their theories is that they show the human being, first of all, is not separate from its environment. At least at times they point to that direction. And that our ego, our normal state of consciousness, is not real. It's a hallucination. And I agree, but then they don't take steps to ameliorate that hallucination. They don't embrace phenomenology, or they don't embrace, a method to transforming consciousness. And you've said meditation is sort of a waste of time, and that may be. But I think there are still methods of coming to understand these processes that no one is in control of. I can't control my thoughts. I can't control my emotions, but I can learn to generate new habits step by step just by, training, exercise. I can maintain equilibrium better. I can control my anger if I'm constantly reminding myself. There's no ego to remind me, but you get into that habit. And over time, the neocortex feeds back down into the lower brainstem and the amygdala and the fornix and stuff, where the emotions are generated. And while it can't prevent them from doing their thing initially, over time that feedback calms the emotion centers down, and we learn to placate our extreme emotions a little bit better, I think. But the question, what is the goal of human life? It would be perfectly okay if we did just completely destroy ourselves and the earth and all that in some kind of thermonuclear technological war or whatever, Terminator style. But that could happen, and that could be just the way the show has been written to pan out. Not that it's fated, and I think that's the important point. We shouldn't be so down on human nature, and we shouldn't think we're so powerless to change anything. And again, it's not as though we are in control of anything, but we can realize that spending so much money on warfare and killing one another and polluting the environment, not living in balance with the ecosystem, we can realize that we don't fully understand who we are yet, and to develop the kind of technologies where we can, engineers are always trying to control the world. They want to have power and make nature do what they want it to do. And that seems to me to be a fatuous pursuit, because now that we do have all of this genetic, biotechnological ability, we don't know what we want to do with it. And certainly there are industrial applications, there are military applications, and that's why I'm so afraid, because these engineers have been co-opted by this military industrial complex. So science isn't at all, there are some aspects of some scientists who aren't funded by the military industrial complex that are working on things that will actually help the human race. But most of the money goes to these military applications, and that, we can do something about that. It doesn't have to be that way. And, Dennett has a book called Freedom Evolves, and I haven't read it, but I've read about it. And I think basically what he says is that as organisms get more complex, they gain a stronger ability to reflexively alter their behavior just by, recomputing it. And over time, new habits develop and whatnot. And I think that is a key point. We're not powerless. We're not so blind and stupid and in the dark about what the good life is. We can't say what the good life is, but we all know and feel inside. There's no inside, but together we can all see that there are more harmonious ways of living and there are more destructive ways of living. And right now we're in this destructive mode, and I don't think we have to be there. I don't think anybody wants to be there. It's just a matter of waking up to our place here, I guess. But yeah, thanks for listening.